The Shadow Curse lands, a land shrouded in darkness and death, and last we left Oliver and crew, they had taken their first steps into the abyss. Before we get started, I want to say thank you so much for all the support on the first video. It was unexpected, but appreciated. I would honestly call this a coward's run, because I'm trying to secure the achievement before I even want to try to tackle every fight. I don't see the point in taking risks that I don't have to until after it's not going to be a waste of a 60-hour run. So I didn't expect most to like it much because I'm skipping things and pretty clearly doing what's the easiest. But it has been really fun to go back through the footage and create a narrative around my choices, and I'm glad folks are enjoying it anyway. Going into Act 2, the plan is simple, and it will hold mostly true until the end of the game if our trek through the Shadow Curse lands ends in victory, and that is, if I don't have to fight it, I'm not gonna fight it. With that being said, let's return to our crew and see how the adventure unfolds. As the unknown stretched before them, Oliver, Gale, Astarion, and Shadowheart walked into the endless darkness. Shadowheart could feel that the curse wasn't affecting her like it might have been for the others, but to protect everyone, she cast light on Oliver's sword and they made their way forward. They ran into a group of strangers traversing the curse, and since they didn't seem to be tainted by the shadows, Oliver told them not to attack lest they invoke his orcish wrath, and before he even knew what happened, the strangers started getting eaten by the shadows. A fight proceeded with the team ready to defend themselves and the strangers. Shadowheart used one of the best spells of this act, Spirit Guardians, and stood fast to shield her squishier friends in a ring of radiant protection that immediately left one of the shadows with only 5 hit points by just walking into it. Then she dropped a heal to give the party Bless and Blade Ward, and Shovel tried to take out the one that she already damaged since she was invisible, but it hung on with 3 HP. On Oliver's turn, a Pommel Strike took out the damaged shadow, and 2 Divine Smites absolutely wrecked 2 more from full health to dead before they even got to take a turn. Astarion took out the corrupted Jonas and another shadow on his turn. Shadowheart revealed the hidden shadow behind them by walking into it with her Spirit Guardians and slapping it with the Blood of Lathander. And Oliver took out the last shadow no problem after that. The strangers then invited the group to their safe haven, leading them to an inn protected from the shadows. Oliver thought they could finally rest easy for a moment, but they were instead greeted by another crazy druid. Her name was Jaheira, and she entangled Oliver because she could tell Oliver had a brainworm. He showed her his fancy artifact, and after it made her worm in a bottle explode, she agreed to let them stay. The crew then stopped by a nearby trader and got some gear that would help give the party a boost in power. Kitted out with the most useful items they could find for now, Oliver talked to Jaheira, hoping that she may be able to help them fast-track their way to the city to deal with their worms. She told Oliver to visit the Cleric of Saloon upstairs to get some kind of blessing, but in true Oliver fashion, he figured that he'd just explore the inn first. Walking back outside, he saw a group of harpers preparing to intercept a convoy headed to Moonrise Towers, the place Oliver was told could hold the solution to his worm problem. Tagging along with their group, they positioned themselves for an ambush. What approached from the dark was a group of goblins and orcs accompanied by a giant drider. Staying hidden in the darkness, he witnessed the creature's unhinged attack on one of its allies, so he presented himself, hoping he could use some of his paladin riz to get the better of the situation. He convinced the creature that the Absolute had promised to give him the fancy lantern that he had, and then threatened to drag them all into the darkness screaming if they questioned him anymore. After listening to their screams fade into the darkness, Oliver retrieved the lantern and noticed that there was a pixie inside. He freed it.
Finally! Been trapped in that coffin with no one but a mad rider and my own farts for company.
And she gave him a bell to grant him and his allies the pixie blessing to protect them from all the effects of the Shadow Curse. Now that he had been given a free pass to wander, he completely ignored going to Moonrise to instead go into a fight with these measles, those things who were set up to ambush them. Sending in an invisible shovel, they turned the ambush into a surprise round for themselves. Unfortunately, it wasn't as clean as they hoped, with Oliver missing his first swing and the team failing to take any of them down before they got to act next round. Shovel kept 2 distracted, but one of them grabbed hold of Gale. While he was restrained, he could only cast one spell, so he knocked himself prone after throwing an ice knife point blank in front of him. That was probably not the smartest idea, but I can't blame the wizard. I told him to do it. Oliver ran in to protect Gale from getting pulled away and used his worm critical to nuke the one that grabbed him. Having just enough movement to get into position, he managed to get a couple crossbow shots that took out one of the remaining two surrounding Shovel, and a couple of shots from Astarion finished off the last one. After that fight, the crew decided to rest and return to camp, where things got f***ing weird. I'm not kidding. I went to end the day and I couldn't move, and all the character portraits said that I was in a conversation. Then a cutscene finally started and Mizura came T-posing into the scene.
Hello there.
Then it got stuck on Oliver's face and I couldn't do anything. I think I was supposed to have dialogue or something. I don't know what was going on. I skipped and the scene continued, but whenever the scene switched, it would get stuck again. I went to quit to menu, but then it started playing again, and I finally had dialogue to choose from, but I couldn't click it, and if I did, it didn't do anything. I just went and quit back to menu, but even that was taking longer than normal. After reloading, the issue didn't really fix itself. Every change of scene was getting stuck. Shadowheart decided to show Mizura that she was more dominant by also T-posing in the background. I don't know what was going on. I did finally make it through the Mizura scene, and then the Dream Visitor event triggered and it was doing the same thing. No dialogue choices, but it would get stuck. I quit again. Honestly guys, I have experienced the most bugs with this game during this run, and of course it's honor mode with a single save file. I thought for a moment that I might have to scrap the run because not being able to pick dialogue or even get through a cutscene reliably could result in some bad situations. I know rolls can fail, and I would try to prepare for that as best I could, but I can't account for glitches, and that scares me. Luckily, this seemed to correct itself the next day I played, so crisis averted. Finally managing to get through a night's sleep, Oliver took out his frustration of Mizura's strange visit on some light posts. When he destroyed the last one, some cursed dogs came out of the shadows. No one really took any damage in this fight. Astarion and that bow took out most of them in combination with some steady damage from Spirit Guardians, and Oliver took out the last one. Ready to start heading towards Moonrise and solve their brain problems, they ran into an issue. The Drider Oliver had sent to his death in the shadows was now an undead monstrosity, and he and his goons were patrolling their path. I did a quick examination here because I actually don't know most of the legendary actions. His is Fanatic Retaliation, where he can deal some nasty psychic damage with a Spindaweb Fanatic is killed. The hell does that mean? I had no idea, but he was in Oliver's way of the cure, so he had to go. Sending in Shovel, I accidentally used invisibility a second time, which broke it for a moment and started combat, but then it immediately ended because she was invisible. Using the correct action this time, combat started and Karnas destroyed Shovel. So I got Barstarion to hit him with a ranged flourish. He doesn't start with max health if he walked into the Shadow Curse land, so when he used his turn to walk up to Astarion and Oliver wasn't in the turn order yet, I had him jump in with a Luck of the Far Realm's Divine Smite to kill him before I found out what a Spindaweb Fanatic was. Like a doof, I moved Oliver forward, forgetting that there was more to this area, and accidentally merged combat with the other group of shadow people who hang out here. I hate it when there are this many enemies in the turn order. It takes forever. Remember I said that? It'll come back later. Eventually the cursed creatures were all taken out and Oliver collected the loot from their bodies to barter for some better items later. They finally made it to Moonrise, being stopped by the guards who felt Oliver's brainworm connection and told him to go inside to talk to someone named Zarel. The crew went into the throne room and got to see firsthand what they were going to be up against, with Ketheric Thorm shook off a halberd to the neck like nothing. Oliver could tell immediately that this man was not to be taken lightly, so the group returned to the shadows to look for more experience. So this is where things get a little bit experimental. I was playing around with builds because the ones I was originally going to do I had already played before, and I respect the crew to something new. They are not very good builds, except for Astarion, who is the well-known Gloomstalker assassin, but I think I just wanted to experiment. Probably not the best idea with honor mode, and eventually I do end up going to some more tried and true builds by the end of this, because as much as I love playing around with stuff, I kind of don't want to have to repeat 60 hours again when it all blows up in my face because I was just being an idiot. I went to give these random builds a test drive by walking blindly into a fight with the shambling mound. I thought I'd see what would happen if I just walked face first into a fight with legendary actions. The mound itself has the alert feat, but I still went in with an invisible shovel in hopes that I could get a surprise round on the others in the fight. Combat initiated and shovel was immediately decimated, so that was a bust. I had to respect Oliver cast an Eldritch Blast since he is now some weird hybrid of fighter warlock. I kinda wanted to avoid long resting for a while, I was a little sick of doing it, so I got rid of the paladin just for a bit, guys. It'll come back, don't worry. He was then yeeted like a ragdoll into the mound's necrotic range, and proceeded to be crit by the needles of the blights. I had to Gale join the fight by using a fireball and did a decent amount of damage to a few of the ads. I then got Astarion into the fight to take out some more of the ads. I saw an opportunity to take out a few of the ads at once, and unfortunately Oliver got caught in the crossfire. I accidentally sealed his fate when I had Gale magic missile a couple of the blights. Hear me out. I thought they were far enough away. I'm sorry. I'll do better. With Oliver dead and no longer acting as a distraction, the mound started going in, bashing Shadowheart down and coming for Gale. That meant it was time for Astarion to, skedaddle. Shadowheart went down next, and it was just a lone squishy wizard casting magic missile. We all know how that went, right? Withers!
Dost thou require a new ally?
With the group returned to the land of the living, it was time. Most of the ads were dead now, so the mound was pretty much solo. Oliver gave him a hello with the critical Eldritch Blast and put up hundreds of Hadar for them to enjoy as they slumped their way toward him. Standing back and taking chances that blast them back into the hunger was working for a moment, until the mound then knocked Oliver over and broke his concentration. Then he spotted Gale and Shadowheart. Since Astarion can't damage the mound, he was hanging back, but the fight was moving toward him, so he took out the remaining blight and was able to cause a small amount of acid damage with his arrows. With the mound alone, it was just a matter of taking out his health, and after he fell prone because of Gale's ice, it only took a few more hits. That was a pretty fun fight. I obviously could have done a lot better and been a little bit more prepared, but who doesn't love running face first into a fight and seeing what happens? I'm gonna be way more cautious from here on out though. We'll leave the balls to the wall, try anything and everything run for the next time. His changing powers had Oliver's mind in a fog, but he remembered that the Gith were apparently versed in the worms, and after he was put in that machine that nearly killed him, he was starting to believe that they had messed with his head. The crew returned to the creche to speak with the Githyanki. After that riveting conversation that got him no answers, they went back to the Inquisitor, who was still just standing in that room, waiting like he was the last time they walked through there. And he just continued to stand there as the team got into position to totally not do anything suspicious. With a successful sneak attack, the group had initiative, going before everyone in the room. I had a pretty bad opener with Astarion, who I hoped to possibly take the Inquisitor out. He was still holding on when it got to Oliver's turn, and with a missed swing on his second attack, he didn't go down. It was up to Gale, and I thought about it for a moment. Tempted to do Magic Missile, but I was afraid that I would get left with one hit point, as is tradition at this point, so I opted for the level 3 Scorching Ray. risking the attack rolls. They landed, boys. We did it. With the big boss man down and everyone else in the room surprised, clearing them out was easy. Astarion one-rounded this archer, Oliver one-shot this lady, and the other two went down without causing much damage to anyone else. When they were all dead, Oliver was surprised by the appearance of Blackith, the Gith Queen. Knowing from first-hand experience to respect otherworldly beings, he listened to her request. She demanded that the group go into the artifact they carried and kill the being inside. He didn't know what to think anymore, so he agreed to go into the artifact. Once inside, he refused to kill her, hoping instead to get more details on what was going on before he made a decision. He was tired of being manipulated. He would find a way to end this. They cleared the remaining Gith from the crush, leaving no survivors, to make sure that they didn't come back to find them later. Once he was satisfied, they returned to the Shadow Curse lands to continue to make progress. It was time to take out the Thorms. You all know the plan, and we all know that these guys are the prime example of you don't need to fight everything, and the plan is to do just that. So they're perfect for farming experience. First up, Goth. First up, the Toll House lady, because I don't know how to say her name, so we're just gonna call her that. I was actually going to fight her, but after making Shovel do a surprise attack, she got mad, but she was still willing to talk. Oliver wasn't really attuning too much to his divine powers, but he could still turn on the charm, and with some great rolls, he managed to convince her that her money was better left off to him.
Gold! Gold!
Next, the House of Healing with Malice Storm. I don't assume that anything will turn out in my favor, so I positioned my party to be able to attack if this conversation didn't go well. Gale and Astarion took the high ground while Oliver initiated conversation. Another string of really good rolls with advantage. Gotta love the Friends cantrip, which is very useful for talking these guys down, because they can't get mad at you if they're, not alive anymore. Last was the big fella. He just wanted some good stories, so despite Oliver's head being all wrecked, he took a drink. Or at least he pretended to. Passing a series of sleight of hand checks in combination with performance and deception checks, I did have to use a few inspiration rolls in there too. Thizzabold had a little too much to drink and stopped being alive for it. With the Thorms out of the way and a new influx of cash from the Toll House, they spent the next few days getting into fights and exploring around the area to hone their skills and prepare to face a threat like Ketheric. They fought some Meanlock underneath Last Light, dealt with some shadows in the Masons Guild, nearly died fighting some slimes and acid. Seriously, I have no idea why this was so hard for me, but these guys were annoying. Took out some fish people hiding around a little hut. Saved Roland from the shadows.
God damn it all!
I like Roland. After staying so focused on traversing the shadows, Oliver was ready for a distraction. It was finally time to deal with Ethel. I had been delaying this because I was farming Ethel for potions daily and I didn't know what I wanted my final build to be, so I didn't want to go for the +1 until I was sure. Taking Ethel out at this high level was not even a challenge. I positioned the crew in the room through sneak mode, got spotted by Ethel trying to free Mayrina before the fight started. Everyone got pulled in, but guess who managed to stay out of combat? Astarion's sneak archer build pretty much deleted her health when he got the sneak attack because he wasn't seen, got all his action backs because assassin, sneak attacked again, then got 2 more attacks, and then dreaded ambusher attack because Gloomstalker. This build is bonkers, man, and I didn't even optimize it. I did make the mistake of casting Magic Missile with Gale. I didn't read Ethel's legendary action because after such a brutal first round I didn't expect this fight to last much longer. But casting it made her create a bunch more clones. Wasn't a problem though, because when it came back around to Ethel, she surrendered. But it put Gale into the conversation. I hate it when this happens. My high charisma character is right there. I did try to roll, but of course that didn't work. sorry Mayrina, but I'm playing this for the achievement, not the roleplay, so yeah. I took the point in charisma, because I'm gonna go for Lockadin, Palak, whatever you call it, the Paladin Warlock guys, that's what I'm gonna go for the final build. With Ethel taken care of and the crush no longer an issue, there was no longer a reason to visit Act 1, so Oliver put it behind him and returned to the Shadowlands to work with Halsin to undo the curse. I've never had much issue defending the portal. A well-placed firewall normally takes care of most of the enemies, and the archers are typically the only thing that might even be able to damage the portal. Even in honor mode, this still worked pretty well. Most of the enemies ran face first into fire, and the ones that didn't were softened by the flames and easily dispatched. There was a really fun moment where they all grouped up and it was the perfect setup for some AoE fun with Gale. After defending the portal successfully, Halsin returned with a kid named Daniel, and Oliver and crew were now tasked with finding his other half. They found the other half in another child named Oliver. Oliver was hoping he would be cool since they shared the same name, but he was a little shit, so they had to chase him deep into the shadows. This fight was different because Oliver, the kid not Oliver, has legendary actions now. I think when you kill one of his shadow spawns for the first time, it creates an area of some pretty nasty necrotic damage. The biggest annoying thing was that they spawned right on Shadowheart with Spirit Guardians once, and it broke concentration for her and Astarion. Also, this f***ing thing kept putting Oliver to sleep. It got a little nasty with a decent spread of necrotic no jutsu spread across the battlefield. I think I had one more round of little Shadow Olivers to defeat before the end, so I risked it with Astarion and had him shoot the rest of the dome. He took a lot of damage, but he survived with 3 hit points, so I'll count it as a win for me. With the curse cured, it was time to start the final stretch of Act 2. I am one who absolutely likes to clear Moonrise of basically every enemy before I go into the final parts of the act. I started in the dungeons to free the tieflings. There are a couple of scrying eyes down here, and after waiting patiently for the right moment, a nicely placed shatter took them both out without anyone noticing. After that, I cleared out the guards. Then the warden. Freeing the prisoners was no issue with no one around to stop us, so those guys got away to safety. Then I went through the rest of this level of the tower, taking out anyone else who was left on the floor. With the basement level clear, Oliver finally went to talk to Zarel because he had forgotten he was supposed to all of this time. After their conversation, Zarel went into her office, and after closing the door and taking out the scrying eye, they had an additional conversation with her.
There's a parasite in that core.
After that, they scrubbed the top floor of the towers clean of any worm worshippers, and even popped up onto the roof to take out this sorcerer lady up there. After so much carnage, it was time to take just a bit of a break. Finding it wise to step away from the tower so that they didn't raise any suspicions, they wandered closer to the road that would take them to the city and were alerted to a Githyanki ambush. Gaining a surprise round with Shovel, the crew focused on this chick, because she seemed to be the most important. She didn't survive the surprise round. That archer build is nasty, man. The rest of the Gith weren't really a problem either. Oliver took out one of the archers before the surprise round ended. Gale used one of my favorite spells and got a hypnotic pattern on 2 of the 3 left over after a surprise round. Oliver hit the one that wasn't stunned with a critical Eldritch Blast, giving her fear, so she also skipped her turn. Oliver burned down a lot of her health, but her parry ability kept her standing. That is, until she tried to cast Jump on herself, and a juiced up Oliver and Astarion used the Psionic Backlash, and she just kinda blew up. The last 2 went down easy peasy after that. With the random tangent taken care of, it was more than enough time for Oliver to decide that it was time to go back to take out the rest of Moonrise. Eliminating the last folks in the main hall brought the party to level 9, and it was time for the gauntlet. Now let's be honest, we have all seen the gauntlet done a million times at this point, so we're gonna speedrun this. Astarion snuck through the sneak trial, lockpicked this door, grabbed the gem. The crew stripped down to their undies, entered the same self-trial, put their clothes back on, and game ended themselves. Got the gem. Leap of faith, I clicked on the ground and let the AI route to the end. Jumped on this platform, got the gem. And in the words of the spiffing Brit, wabam, that was easy peasy, squeeze the lemon. Now the biggest threats down here besides the elevator are Balthazar and Ygir. When I say I had one of the most clench your butt cheeks and hold on tight moments of the run, it happened down here. I got cocky. We'll get there in a minute. First, the boring fight, Balthazar. I decided to take on this fight in a way I personally had never done before. I feel like I've said that way too many times in an honor mode playthrough, but I will say that I will never do this one again though. Remember earlier when I said this? I hate it when there are this many enemies in the turn order, it takes forever. Yeah. Well, we all know that if you use knock on the door with Balthazar, you can merge the combat between the Dark Justiciars. I figured, let's avoid legendary actions that we don't have to deal with this run, so I tried this. I regretted it, and I wish I just opened fire on him like I normally do. This took so long. It wasn't even hard. I didn't worry once through the fight, but it took ages. Please, Larian, if we get more quality of life updates, could we have a double speed on enemy turns or something? Basically, it was your standard affair. Hung back and let Balthazar and his lackeys get softened up. When his health was low, I took him out. Then I just cleaned up the remaining Justiciars. Most annoying fight by far. Do not recommend you handle it this way. Ygir. Here is where I was humbled, and I made the decision that if I made it past Merkel, I would take the safest possible route to the end, so I didn't destroy my own sanity by repeating something this dumb. Remember when I told you I got cocky? Yeah, it was here. And it wasn't Ygir. Ygir melted like butter under the target of that archer build. It was honestly unfair. My man didn't even get to have a turn. If I get the achievement this run, I'm coming back with less optimal builds and I'm going for pure fun. We can still be powerful, but wow, talk about trivializing a boss. This trivializing and hilariously OP build did inflate my head a bit though, cause I broke quite a few of my rules. Number 1, I underestimated the remaining enemies. Number 2, I stood in a clump. When I say clump, I mean, you know, when you're standing in that perfect place for an AoE to just hit your entire party. Yeah, that. I did that.
No.
I never played honor mode and I don't remember if these guys have explosives in the lower difficulty settings, but I learned that they do in honor mode. Y'all. The butt cheeks were so clenched here. I thought I screwed up the run, not from facing legendary actions, but from the f***ing ads. This was nearly a disaster, and I absolutely grounds for Protocol get the hell out of there right now. Astarion bailed since he was still standing. Surprisingly, Gale didn't take any damage, but I think the Arcane Ward saved him. He gave a potion to Shadowheart to get her off the ground and got out of there too. Shadowheart got Oliver back up and he Misty stepped away to safety. I tried to have Shadowheart flee, but she didn't have enough movement to jump this gap. She then got surrounded, so I used this charge attack to move to the edge and she actually took an enemy down with her. They wouldn't jump the gap after her, and after missing a bunch of arrow shots, she also got away. Ultimately, the whole team did survive this encounter, but wow, did I learn my lesson. Oliver and the crew healed up, and you know they went back for revenge. I did some recon with an invisible shovel and saw all the remaining Mergans were crowded at that gap with everyone fled from, so something told me combat would start as soon as I left the camp. I was correct, and leaving camp put us back in the turn order.
Round 2.
From across the gap and remembering to spread out the team so that there were no surprise explosives, this was closer to what I expected the first time. With that heart-stopping encounter done, it was time for another potential run-ender, this elevator. If you have any interest in honor mode at all, you've probably seen the videos of people sliding off this elevator and falling to their deaths. A very real possibility that can still happen as far as I'm aware. Oliver braved the ride though, going alone without the crew and making it safely to the bottom. He put in the gems, got through the door, and unlocked the waypoint so everyone else could just teleport. Finally making it into the Shadowfell, the crew found out the true secret to Kethric's immortality, a celestial being called the Night Song that he kept imprisoned here. Shadowheart was really determined to be the one to decide if she lived or died, and Oliver just wanted to be able to kill Ketheric, so he let her make the choice. She chose to free the Night Song, and Oliver wouldn't complain about having more allies. So with their work here completed, they returned to Moonrise to face Ketheric. Seeing as they had massacred basically everyone before this, there was nothing really to show. They just walked upstairs and up to the roof where the big man himself was waiting. Oliver really didn't want to fight Ketheric if he didn't have to, and he remembered reading the sad letter he wrote to his wife, so he tried to convince him that he could still be redeemed. He seemed to be going along with it, but the Night Song that they freed earlier kinda made that plan fall apart. This first phase wasn't too bad. Ketheric is resistant to a lot of damage, so Astarion, Shadowheart, and Gale took on the smaller bone dudes while Oliver and Aelin fought Ketheric. Astarion did manage to get him for about 33 health in one of his turns, but a good round from Oliver took his health low enough to trigger the cutscene before he caused much damage. Taking out the rest of the enemies on the roof was easy, and then it was time to go down into the colony. Nothing down here really stuck out too much. I got as much XP as I could by doing the various fights, picked up Us, and then got the one-use restoration station and headed down for Ketheric round 2. Now I played D&D with a group of friends, like twice a year on a new moon during the winter solstice when we can all align our schedules. One of the running themes of our party, and most parties I'm sure, is that if you make a plan, it's probably gonna fall apart. You're likely it's not gonna work, but you're gonna do it anyway, but it's not gonna work. And I had a plan. Nothing revolutionary. It's basically the plan I feel like most folks approach this fight with. I was gonna use invisibility to position the party and then initiate the conversation. Talk Ketheric down to skip the first phase, take out the Mind Flayer, focus Ketheric. I had that necklace that lets you cast branding or something like that, I forgot the name. I thought since he is resistant to most damage, I would cast it on him and make it vulnerable to piercing, and try to get a shot on him with Astarion with an undead arrow to cause some good damage. You know where I'm going with this, right? Of course it doesn't happen that way. It's not gonna happen that way, guys. It's not. I tried to sneak kill the Mind Flayer with Astarion before combat started with greater invis. This immediately pulled Astarion with his -1 charisma into the conversation with Ketheric instead of Oliver, who was still invisible. I used one of Shadowheart's spell slots to enhance ability to get advantage. I wanted to pass this check, guys. And succeeded after one inspiration reroll. I actually still had a little time to position folks with Astarion managing to be at the top of the turn order and everyone else still invisible. I jumped back to scratch and freed Aelin, put everyone else back in turn-based because, as a note, they leave turn-based and they would lose invisibility as the clock would keep ticking. I also hadn't disconnected everyone, so Gale was slowly making his way back to Oliver and away from his position. I'm glad I thought about this before that happened. I put Gale back into place, fireballed these skeletons. Took out the Mind Flayer with Astarion and got him into position. Casted the Brand the Weak on Merkel, fired the undead arrow. Okay, let's try that again. And it basically did no damage. And Astarion is frightened now. Wonderful. The next shot did even less damage because he's resistant again, so Astarion's role from here is pretty much going to be taking out the ads. With his reaction this turn used, Oliver went in for a few swings, not holding back, but not really turning out anything amazing either. I had Gale pop a potion of speed and fireball these guys again to take most of them out. Then used an invisible shovel to take out the last straggler. I tried to AoE these brains with a trap, but they just ignored it. Unfortunately, they started to distract Aelin. I was hoping to pull her in close to Merkel to take some of the heat off Oliver, but he will have to tank for now. Oof, that was not pretty. Time to move in the summons. The Earth Elemental has a big health pool, and after watching Oliver get slapped for most of his health, I moved this behemoth into place to take over tank duties. The other little guy didn't really get to do anything, but he was still there too, I guess. My boy Gale cast Fireball right on Merkel's butt, and honestly, I think this dealt the most damage to him over time. Gale was pretty much ignored up here, so while he was concentrating, his focus was managing pods. As expected, this Bone Lord hits like a truck, deleting a huge pull of the Earth Elemental's health, but he got right back into tanking position on his turn. At this point, the rounds were pretty routine. Gale blasted pods. Aelin finally got in close on her turn, and she died on Merkel's next turn. The Earth Elemental finally went down, and I think Merkel will do his like pole attack where he sucks everybody in if there's no one within melee range with him, so Oliver had to play tank again. This is not easy because this dude hits hard and takes like no damage, so Oliver was down to 22 health pretty quickly. I had him disengage to retreat and heal, and Gale got another Earth Elemental into the fight on his turn. This was a pretty long fight. His health was finally down to the last 22 or so hit points after basically taking passive fire damage from the firewall most of the fight, so I gave him everything I got. Gale unloaded a magic missile and he was down to 6 hit points, and at the end of his next turn, he died to the MVP, Firewall. With Ketheric dead and the first Netherstone in hand, the road to Baldur's Gate was clear. The crew left the lands free of the curse that once plagued them, and they were one step closer to freeing themselves from the Netherbrain's grasp. If you made it this far, I want to say thanks for watching this video, and thanks again for all the support on part 1. I will say I feel like this run has been the most restrictive, if that makes sense. I really want to walk into encounters blindly without knowing everything new to expect, but the idea of going 60 or 70 hours into a run and losing it all, I don't have the free time to spare for multiple runs just to get the achievement. That's kind of why I went with the Archer build, which, let's be honest guys, it can solo honor mode, so it is sort of my insurance, but to be truthful, I plan to rush the end for this run and then play another run with more limitations and roleplay and actually do it for pure fun, knowing that if I screw up, I can keep going without the stress of knowing that I have to do it again for the achievement. So anyways, thank you again for making it this far, and I will get to work on Act 3 as we plan to coast our way through the rest of the game.